Доброго дня, шановні.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Ukrainian Crisis Media Center starts its work. Thank you for joining us today. Our today's topic is as follows: a unique mission. American doctors save the lives of Ukrainian kids. Our today's speakers are Dr. Gennadiy Fuzaylov from Harvard Medical School, Dr. Daniel Driscoll from the Harvard Medical School, and Dr. Jason Clayne. Now, they will describe their mission in Ukraine. The floor is yours, Dr. Gennadiy.
Добрый день. Мне очень...
Good morning, good afternoon, dear friends. Thank you for giving us this time for the presentation. Thank you to Mr. Charlie, who invited us here to describe what we are doing in Ukraine, what we have been doing for many years in Ukraine. We have arrived just yesterday. Now, within 2-3 minutes, I will describe the things which makes me happy here today. The first thing is that we have got this joyful opportunity in the midst of pandemic to come here and to unite the team coming from 5 different states and to arrive here to help to save Ukrainian children and to meet more good people. And those good people, as we know from our experience, are usually on the same side as we are. Just like Valery Charlie, who organized our presentation here today. Also, I would like to thank to those who contributed to this cooperation. The hospital in the Dnipro city with Dr. Vlasov, who supported and helped in many ways to organize our arrival during pandemic, and we had to invent how to do this, to invent how to do this in course of pandemic to make it safe in terms of spreading the infection. Then I would like to thank to Mr. Boris Filatov, who is the head of Jewish community in Dnipro, and Rabbi and Ravik Kamenetsky, who is head of administration, the seat of administration. I would like to thank to all those people who assisted us in this year's arrival, and I perhaps have to describe in 2 minutes what happened at the customs checkpoint yesterday. We wasted actually 2 hours after 2 sleepless nights, and the border guards and specifically anti-smuggling unit of the border guards or the customs service, they their main claim was that we should not keep with us the special needles and threads for our work, and this resulted in the fact that I had to disturb and bother the health minister, Mr. Filatov, in the Dnipro city, and focus their attention on that incident. Also, I would like to mention Irina, who failed to resolve this problem at the customs checkpoint. We were actually allowed to keep our threads and our needles with us at the American customs, while Ukrainian customs service had suddenly decided that American doctors are keeping some smuggled goods with them when crossing the border, which was very surprising and unpleasant, of course. As for our visit this time, we plan to have up to 35 operations in the Dnipro city, and all the patients were selected remotely. We never saw them. In the previous years, we had a selection round where we were able to review and examine up to 200 patients in the hospital before the operations. This time, it had become impossible. I personally would like to thank very much to my colleagues who arrived this time with me from 5 different states in our country, and they actually sacrificed their holidays and vacations, and from Texas, Massachusetts, and other states. And with this, I would like to give the floor to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Driscoll. I'm a plastic surgeon from Boston, working at Harvard hospitals, including Mass General Hospital and Shriners Burns Institute. Dr. Fuzaylov and I have been involved in this charitable efforts since, I believe, 2009. And during that time, we've had a chance to interact with many of our colleagues here in both anesthesia and burn care. I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to say hello again to all of my colleagues here in Ukraine. During that time, we have had a chance to do several things during this project. One is several children have indeed been saved by med flighting to the United States, where the chances of survival here were extremely slim, but we managed to save their lives in Boston. Those are some of the children that we will be doing reconstructive surgery on coming up in this next week. Not only can we, through this project, help save children's lives, but it's actually helping their quality of life. So if a child, for instance, has a severe burn to their face, they may not be able to close their eyelids because of the scar contracture. So some of the surgery we have done in the past has allowed us to do relatively simple surgery to allow the child to close their eyes again and not lose vision. And that preventive measure saves a child's vision for the rest of their life. We've also been able to take children who've had limited motion, whether it's their hands, fingers, feet, be able to let them use their hands and their feet again. So this is very rewarding, and it's also something that our colleagues here in Ukraine, Ukrainian doctors, have the capability, but sometimes not the infrastructure to complete these efforts. But it's been very fulfilling for us to be able to see these children come in years later and actually walking into our clinic or into our operating room with smiles on their faces, knowing that our efforts have really meant a great deal to, even though it may be a small number of children, it means a great deal to them. But thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you all our program to try to help improve burn care here in this country. And with that, I'll sign over to my colleagues.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Jason Clayne. I'm another Boston-based plastic surgeon. It's my first time over here and very excited to join the team. 10 years ago, I met a little kid named Matthew, and he had an interesting problem. He couldn't open his jaw. He had scar tissue at the top right side of his jaw that for years and years they'd been repeatedly operating on him, and every time for a few months Matthew could open his mouth again. But 2 months later the scar tissue would reform, and once again Matthew couldn't open his mouth. And one of the saddest parts was that what Matthew wanted to do was just be able to brush his teeth like his little sister. He was about 7 or 8, and his sister I think was 3 or 4, and he thought, why can't I brush my teeth but my little sister can? And a surgeon that I worked with in New York, Dr. Erkin, moved some tissue with a plastic surgery procedure from Matthew's back up into his jaw, and for the first time ever he created a new plane for his jaw to glide, and then once again, Matthew was now able to open his mouth and to eat and drink, and started brushing his teeth like his little sister. So that was before I started medical school, and that's kind of how I became interested in plastic surgery. And over the last 10 years, I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing surgeons, and recently with Dr. Driscoll in Boston, where we took a little girl who had had bad burn contractures to her lower limbs. And she couldn't walk very well. And the problem was her legs were stuck in a position that just wouldn't allow for walking. So in a similar type procedure, Dr. Driscoll transferred tissue to the back of her legs. And then for the next 6 weeks, she rode around on her belly in a cart, driving around the hospital that we were at. And I've never seen someone smile more. She was so happy to have just had the opportunity to have a procedure that gave her some new momentum. And then 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, 12 weeks later, she started walking again. And these are the type of things that kind of plastic surgery and this type of training can bring to these children. So I'm really, really excited to be here and have the opportunity to try to do something similar over here, and then hopefully bring some of it back to the US as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Дякуємо, друзі. У нас є запитання від наших глядачів, які
We have got several questions from our spectators who are watching us on stream. And there is an understanding in Ukraine that your visit is a charity, and the standard perhaps question, why do you feel there's this wish, this intention to come somewhere to help children? What is the source of this philanthropy? Why do you feel that you should not work just only in America, but go somewhere around the globe to rescue children, to save children's lives?
We
have been doing this for many years now. Dr. Driscoll is being involved in this mission for 12 years now, and I participated in something around 60 missions. We have been coming here for 10 years now, and when we just started to do this, we faced things rather surprising to us. Here in Ukraine, you do not officially train surgeons who are able to do cosmetic surgery and restoring surgery. They have to learn it by themselves. In the United States, the cost of bed in hospital for a burnt patient is $10,000, and in intensive care unit, and it's much cheaper to come here and to help to come and help people here. And at the same time, you can help people. So during our first visits, we tried to understand how it is possible to help in many dimensions, not only to help kids. We started with 20 operations per week, and now we reached the figure of 70 operations per week, and now we see our objective in a larger scale of impact on all the neighboring services and neighboring procedures. We try to understand how, with available resources, to provide maximum assistance here in Ukraine, and we have found good cooperation in Lviv and established some procedures and process how to help patients. This time we will try to do the same in Dnipro city. We hope that the hospital administration will assist us, and we will do the same thing as we did in Dnipro. Does anybody wants to comment?
Thank you very much. The question is posed to us frequently: why do we consider the charitable work here? And it all began with Nastyov Char, and from there we developed collegial actions that we were invited to come discuss how we might offer our opinion on improvement of care, which has actually translated to some procedural and changes in how burn care is delivered, including an increased use of tracheostomy, an increased use of ventilation, a decrease in the need for blood transfusions. The collaborative effort, because there's been such a good work with the national group here in Ukraine, the burn surgeons, is that we've been able to improve publications of improvement of care. We have actually delivered equipment for both anesthesia and surgery to hopefully improve care, multiple supplies. We have been able to, through a lot of work of Dr. Fuzaylov, bring surgeons and anesthesiologists and critical care doctors to Boston for several months of integration and learning, as well as bringing children who to the United States for extremely complex care that could not quite be easily accomplished in the 1 week that we usually stay here. And then for those children that we do interact with and help here, while the numbers for a country as large as this is relatively small, it does have an impact on those children. And secondly, I would say, is the surgeons we work with, I think, do gain some experience from how we do things, and I've gained experience on how they do things. So that exchange of information is very helpful for all children that we take care of in the future.
Дякую. Доктор Клейн.
Just a little more. Yeah, So thank you again so much for having us here. Like I said earlier, it's my first trip here, so I'm really excited to continue to learn from the senior surgeons who I've worked with for so long, and to learn from the local surgeons as well. I think it's a unique opportunity to be able to combine care that's been done that we do over in the US and care that's done here. We all do things differently. And every time I enter into a new operating room or a new country or a new environment, I feel like I learn so much more than a week spent just doing the same thing that I've been doing for the last 10 years. So very, very excited to be here, excited to see a little bit of the city as well before we take off. And thank you again for having us.
Дякую. У нас є ще одне запитання від наших глядачів. Вони питають, ось доктор Фузайлов та доктор Дріскол вже кілька років приїздять до України. Які проблеми ви бачите в системі охорони здоров'я України? Чи покращується щось з роками? Чи можете ви порівняти, чи стало краще з першого вашого приїзду?
А у меня не переводится по-английски.
Second channel.
Second channel. Got it.
just lost it. She didn't actually translate that.
Oh, she didn't translate it?
that one translate.
Oh.
I will repeat translation if you haven't heard.
Whether you mentioned some changes in healthcare system, it becoming better or worse? And what difficulties do you have as doctors concerning your work in Ukraine?
I think that I've worked with some extremely talented Ukrainian surgeons. I would like to see a more formalized training regime. I think that would be helpful to help transfer the information these talented surgeons have garnered over their careers to the next generation. I think it probably is happening, and I just haven't seen the mechanism, or I don't understand, to be honest, the exact progression of standardized training here in Ukraine. It is very regimented in the United States how it is accomplished, and so I have a better understanding how the training works in the U.S.
Я просто хочу добавить то, что
I would like to add to what Dr. Driscoll said. Having in place a structured educational system for doctors of narrow specialization would allow to check the progress. We hope that we will serve as catalysts of establishing such formalized official system for preparing doctors. And we even discussed this with the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. We discussed that perhaps it is useful to have a special structure for training and for training of doctors of more narrow specialities. Thank you very much. We haven't got further questions. Thank you to the speakers for joining us today. Thank you for your attention, friends, and see you next time.
Спасибо.